Good morning, all of you. Welcome to the channel. So today we'll take up all the important topics from 3rd June 2023's newspaper. Firstly, we know about that there was a train accident in Odisha and it has led to the lives of 70 people. But as per the live updates, 280 people have died. More than 350 they have injured in this accident. And basically, this accident was because three trains they collided with each other. So that was the reason. And if we understand the location, so it was in Balasore. So here is the railway station towards which the train they were approaching. And so who should actually take the responsibility of such incidences, and like how can we ensure the prevention of such incidences which happens because of such silly reasons that three trains they collide. And obviously this thing is known before that which train is approaching where, and everything is like predetermined. So why this accident? Because of such a reason that it was because of collision of three trains at the same time. So regarding the wrestlers protest, the update is that you need to begin talks with the wrestlers or face the agitation from 9th of June. So basically the farmer leaders, they have given a deadline of June 9, and also a warning from the CAP leaders to the center. So a Mahapanchayat was organized in Haryana's Kurukshetra on Friday, and it gave the union government a week to initiate a dialogue on the wrestlers' demand for the arrest of WFI chief, and he's also BJP MP Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. And since they have been now like have reached global level, global bodies even they have put forward their point of view. So when we talk about the state of Telangana, so it has many goals to reach despite becoming a strong economy. So they are celebrating their formation day. And the chief minister, he says that the state started its journey facing several challenges, but it has now become a role model for all other states. So we can like it has become a kind of a case study, like it is among the top states in several parameters. And definitely in the beginning, there was uncertainty in terms of power supply, water supply, and there was resource crunch. So Telangana's policies with a human face, they have become role models for the country with several states emulating them. So the government, it is completely aware about the aspirations of the people, and they're taking the required steps in order to fulfill them. And the manifesto has been designed in such a way that the people's aspirations, they are fulfilled. So that's very important. Obviously, the government, it is a representative government, basically directly elected by the people. The people, they directly elect their representatives, and that is the foremost function and responsibility, or we can say the duty of the government. And even when we talk about good governance, so that aspect also comes into the picture. So proactive policies, they were initiated, and government has ensured that the per capita income of the state, which was at rupees 1.24 lakh in 2014-15, it has now increased to rupees 3.17 lakh at present. So that's amazing. And the second thing is GSDP of the state. It rose from around rupees 5 lakh crores to now it is approximately very close to rupees 13 lakh crores. So the state's economy has seen tremendous growth. And these are the two parameters, per capita income and GSDP, through which we can assess the performance of the state. And then some of the recent decisions includes that rupees 1 lakh financial assistance would be provided to families of artisans, and distribution of pattas of the Podu lands to the tribal families would take place. There would be distribution of house sites to poor, and there would be implementation of the KCR nutrition kits scheme in 24 of the 33 districts of the state. So few measures in order to fulfill and in order to ensure the welfare of the tribal community, and also taking steps. And when we talk about the issue of nutrition insecurity. So Prime Minister says that Chhatrapati Shivaji's work, it continues to be relevant in today's time. So he was a Maratha warrior king, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is a source of inspiration, and that the work done by him continued to be relevant even today. So the personality becomes very important. We need to find all the important details about his life, his valuable contributions. So basically, he was addressing the meet at the Raigad Fort in Maharashtra to mark 350th anniversary of the coronation of the Maratha warrior king, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. And apart from that, he personified courage and possessed sharp administrative skills. And he always believed in the welfare of the people as the basic principle of his administration. So, as we were talking in the context of the state of Telangana, also, so the state, it has become a role model in several aspects. So, welfare of the people is the basic principle of administration. So even Chhatrapati Shivaji Swaraj also belonged to the common people. He never allowed discrimination due to caste or creed. So wealth from waste. In this picture, you're seeing saplings. They've been planted on an old boat as part of the canal rejuvenation project and municipality's total sanitation campaign in Alappuzha. So that's how basically recycling of things, reuse of things, and definitely a part of the canal rejuvenation. So that's how they have reused this particular boat and they've planted the saplings. So different innovative ideas, they are important in order to meet with this challenge of waste and reusing things in multiple ways. So talking about the benefits and avoiding the adverse effects of artificial intelligence. Yesterday also we discussed in detail through an article in the Mint newspaper about artificial intelligence and what are the global concerns related to it. So there are different points of view regarding whether it is beneficial or whether it should be, used in a regulated manner or not. So here it is stating that generative artificial intelligence is the AI that can create new data. So since in the very beginning, it is mentioning about generative AI. So you need to also search about it because this is very important to understand how it is different, what are the different properties that it possesses. So generative artificial intelligence, it can create new data. So there are many instances where it has been used in the world today. Most commonly, it is used to generate text, images, and code in response to the user's request, even if they are capable of more. So obviously, upon request, they can also generate text, they can generate images, and even do coding also. So their widespread adoption really embellished their capabilities, leading to awe than worry. So that's definitely was a surprise about the functions that it can perform. So OpenAI's Chat GPT, I hope everyone must have at least used Chat GPT. So OpenAI's ChatGPT chatbot, it mimics intelligence very well, but today it has become synonymous with the abilities of generative AI at large as well. So in last few years, AI models backed by neural networks, they were trained on a very large data sets and with access to sufficient computing power, they have been used to do good, such as finding the new antibiotics and alloys for clever entertainment and cultural activities and for many banal tasks. But it has got attention most notably with its ability to falsify the data also. So that is the challenge, that it has even this ability to falsify the data. So world is past, it is being able to reliably differentiate between data that faithfully reflects the reality and data made to look that way by bad faith actors using AI. So that is one of the major disadvantages, or we can say challenges, that is emerging from this technology of AI. So some specific concerns which are enumerated in other communiques, they are worth taking seriously. However, the inscrutability of the inner workings of AI model, their use of copyrighted data, and regard for the human dignity and privacy and protections from the falsifying information, these are some of the challenges. So you can note them down if you're like making some notes, because all the keywords they have been used here in short. So models being developed and used today, they are not mandated to tick these boxes. And even as there is no way to understand the risks they pose. So these are some of the challenges emerging from this technology. So here it is talking about CBAM. We have discussed this thing in a detail, which is the carbon border tax that would be basically, it would be like imposed by European Union. And what are the concerns, like how it would be impacting the trade from India, the exports from India into the European Union countries? Then it's also talking about the GATT, which is General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. So even in this context, we need to, understand the proper chronology, the proper evolution behind the formation of WTO. What were the agreements that were signed before and even the years. So Article 20, it is the conservation of exhaustible natural resources. So this is Article 20 of GATT we're talking about. So basically CBAM, it's obviously targeting the carbon emissions. So whether it will be fruitful or not, and whether it will be, actually helping us in meeting the goal of zero carbon, that is something to be discussed in detail further. But all the basic things we have understood it before regarding it. So we're not going into the details of this topic here. So mural in the new parliament, it shows Ashoka Empire. This is a statement coming from the Union government. So India, it downplayed the issue of mural in the new parliament building that has triggered some concerns in Nepal and Pakistan. So at a media briefing, the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson, he described that the mural as an artwork that depicted the spread of the prehistoric Ashokan Empire. So mural in question, it is depicting the spread of the Ashokan Empire and the idea of responsible and people-oriented governance that Ashoka adopted and even he propagated. So that is the basic purpose or basic symbolism of the mural, which is in question. So that's what the plaque in front of the mural it says. And I really do not don't have anything further to add to that. And I'm not going to comment on the statements that other political leaders might have made. So this is coming from him. So all other culturally important artifacts and the design of the new parliament is important for us because a lot of new things they have been made or they have been depicted in the new parliamentary building. On the world page, Pakistan is going to engage in barter trade with Afghanistan, Iran, and Russia. So here you can imagine the economic situation that is there in Pakistan in today's time, that they are they have come to this extent that they are now engaging in barter trade. So Pakistan, it has passed a special order to allow barter trade with Afghanistan, Iran, and Russia for certain goods like petroleum and natural gas. So Blinken says that no Ukraine truce without Russian pullback. So Russia-Ukraine war, we are not seeing that situation getting under control, or right now we are not seeing even countries they are willing to initiate talks to end this war. So a ceasefire that simply freezes the current lines in place is not a just and a lasting peace. Obviously, we need to do something which is long lasting. And US Secretary of State, he is on a visit. So Kyiv claims it shot down more than 30 Russian missiles and drones on Friday. So there can be no ceasefire in the war in Ukraine unless it is part of a just and lasting peace deal that includes Russia's military withdrawal. So it needs to happen both the ways from both the parties. Only then we can expect a long lasting peace. So even regarding the Ukraine war, China cites difficulties in holding the talks. So apart from this topic, the other important topic that we have discussed in detail with proper critical analysis is how this war has reshaped the geopolitics in this region. So there are a lot of aspects that we have taken up, we have discussed. So that is much more important topic than this news over here. So US averts the first ever default with 11th hour debt deal. So we know that US debt ceiling issue that's in news, and US senators they voted to suspend the federal debt limit. So to suspend the federal debt limit, whatever limit has been imposed, they have voted that that limit should be suspended. So capping weeks of fraught negotiations to eliminate the threat of a disastrous credit default just 4 days ahead of the deadline, which is set by the Treasury. So it is, we can say, in the last moment, they have been taking steps in order to ensure that there is no default. So economists, they had warned the country it could run out of money to pay its bill by Monday, leaving almost no room for delays in enacting the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which extends the government's borrowing authority through 2024 while trimming the federal spending. So, hammered out between the Democratic president and the Republicans, the measure it passed the Senate with a comfortable majority. So no one gets everything they want in a negotiation, but make no mistake. So this bipartisan agreement, it is a big win for the economy and the American people. So we've been talking about the insurance thing that the regulatory body, which is the Insurance and Regulatory Development Authority of India, it is trying to ensure that what steps or what kind of policy is important to increase the insurance penetration rate in India. So it eyes the insurance push in rural areas. So rural areas definitely they are going to be under focus and attention with the Bima Vahak. Like we have business correspondents. So similarly, we are talking about the Bima Vahak. So Bima means insurance, Vahak is vehicle. So publishers draft guidelines on the dedicated distribution channel, primarily comprising women to cater to the insurance needs in villages. And insurers, they could tailor the plans to meet financial protection needs. So boosting the insurance access, IRDA's draft norms for the Bima Vahak scheme, they are aimed at improving the last mile connectivity to raise the rural insurance access, and definitely generating awareness in this context it's a very important step. So Bima Vahak scheme is a component of the IRDA's Insurance for All by 2047 goal. So RBI, it issues draft on the cyber safety for PSOs. So RBI released the draft master directions on cyber resilience and digital payment security controls for the payment system operators. So you can just, have a look at what is the draft talking about and what are the important features. So India needs new skill sets to boost cybersecurity. So definitely with new challenges, we need to adopt or we need to be skilled with new skills in order to deal with them. So India, it will witness a surge in new roles in cybersecurity space. This is as per a report released by the Data Security Council of India. So you need to find out more about this council. And demand for cybersecurity professionals in India, it has increased 54% over the past year. But country does not have enough people with the required skill sets. So that is a challenge. And to address this, we must have robust programs and partnerships amongst various stakeholders. And you can find out about if we have any cybersecurity policy or not. So that is also an important thing. Coming to the Mint newspapers, so we're talking about climate change in oceans. So oceans, they are feeling the heat, rising ocean temperatures, they are affecting health of the marine animals and impacting their ability to survive, because it's very difficult for them to adapt to this rising temperature. So in this picture, you can see crab eater seals. They are resting on a broken sea ice in Antarctica. Here, southern elephant seals on the Peninsula Wales, which is a Patagonian nature reserve in Argentinian coast. Here it is Weddell seal in Antarctica, and these seals, they spend much of their time below the Antarctic ice. So again, here crab eater seal, it dives into the water. Then here bottlenose dolphins, they jump out of the water off the coast of Durban in South Africa. So you need to know about, like, globally, where do we find these bottlenose dolphins? Do we find them in India or not? And even the crab eater seals, do we find them in India or not? So that's important. Then humpback whale, it is near the Reunion Island. So you need to locate where exactly is Reunion Island present. And these humpbacks, they travel great distances every year. So their numbers, they have dwindled due to commercial whaling. So this issue was also like in news before. So you can find out more about this problem of commercial whaling. So now the world is on the cusp of an El Nino event, that is unusual warming of the southern Pacific waters. So that could open the closet door and let the heat and energy spill into our atmosphere. So that's where the heat, which is buried in the ocean, it comes back to haunt us. So you can find out about the NOAA fisheries, which is a US government authority on the science and management of the fish and other marine life and their habitats. So they have explained how climate driven changes like higher ocean temperatures is affecting the health of marine animals. And apart from this, you can find out about the conventions regarding this thing and even an update from IUCN Red List. In December 2022, it also highlighted that human activity is leaving the marine species devastated. So, talking about Earth's biosphere, most of it, 99% of all the livable space on our planet, is underwater. So humanity acts as if oceans they were inexhaustible, but that is not the reality. So because of multiple interacting threats, we are seeing declining life in the sea. So one of the India's most accomplished nature and wildlife photographers, Dhritiman Mukherjee, has spent years documenting marine animals from humpback whales near the Reunion Islands to crab-eater seals found mainly around the coast of Antarctica. His photographs, they are a reminder of what we stand to lose. Coming to Financial Express newspapers are talking about the Monetary Policy Committee to opt for a pause. So withdrawal of the accommodation is likely to stay. So this is a poll of the economists. So as per their viewpoints and their expectations. So here we have what does the poll says. So we have the graph for CPI. So we can see that it is gradually sliding downwards. So that is good news for the economy. Talking about repo rate. So basically RBI began increasing the repo rate from 4% level gradually. And right now it stands at 6.5%. So status quo, when we talk about here, you can see like different banks which expect that status quo needs to be maintained. So at its meeting on 8th of June, the RBI's Monetary Policy Committee, it will likely vote to keep its benchmark repo rate unchanged at 6.5. So this is as per the 14 economists which participated in this poll. So on 8th June, we are having the next MPC meeting. So let's see how things fall in place there. That would be much important thing for us to know rather than this poll. Demand for the rural jobs scheme, it increases again in the month of May. So close to 31.7 million households, they apply for the work. And here even the trend is also being shown in the form of this graph. So there is widening gap in terms of the work that is demanded and actually how much work is provided. So there is rising gap between these two, and this shouldn't happen. So when we try to understand the gap between them, you can see the orange one is showing the amount of work that was actually provided. Blue one is the work demanded. So in May 2023, the work demanded was so high, and comparatively, you can see the work actually provided was very less. So there was a sharp increase in the gap between these two. So around 9.4 million households, they fail to get the wage employment under MG Narega scheme. So all these basic schemes which are in news, we need to know about what are the like challenges and how things can be improved there, the basic features. And then here is like Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana, what has been the journey of this scheme, how changes have been made, what are the important features. All of that is important. Talking about coal production, so that rises 7.1% in the month of May. So cumulative coal production for April and May, it saw a rise to 149.41 million ton in financial year 23 compared to 138 million tons in the previous financial year. So our dependence on coal is increasing. We are having plans for setting up new thermal power stations, which will be based upon coal, because it is important at the same time to maintain and ensure energy security, despite talking so much about green energy transition. So at the same time, maintaining energy security is very important. So that's why we are having plan to set up a number of coal-based thermal power plants in future. So new norms have been issued for deemed university status. So what are these new norms? That becomes important for us to know. So Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan, he released UGC Regulations 2023, which will replace the 2019 guidelines. So you can find out about these newly released guidelines and the important features. So according to the minister, the new rules, they are built on the principle of light but tight regulatory framework envisioned in the National Education Policy 2020. So these are going to encourage universities to focus on quality and excellence, strengthen the research ecosystem, and have a long-term impact on transforming the higher education landscape. So they are light, they are simple, but at the same time, they are tight also. So that is the basic principle on which they are based. So government mulls green ammonia tender to cut the emissions. So number is not final yet, but we may be looking at perhaps around 500,000 ton of green ammonia. So where green ammonia becomes important. So India, it is studying plans to issue a tender for about 500,000 ton of green ammonia to spur emissions reduction in hard to decarbonize sectors like fertilizer production. So talks are taking place between fertilizer manufacturers and countries' renewable energy ministry to assess what is the potential demand for the feedstock. So successful bidders, they would be offered incentives to help drive down the cost of clean ammonia, which is produced causing the emissions-free green hydrogen, and it can be an alternative to natural gas for the fertilizer firms. So you need to know the applications of the green hydrogen also. So we are having this target of being a net zero country by 2070. So using clean hydrogen is also intended to help reduce reliance on energy imports. So even in that area, green hydrogen would be very important for us. And green hydrogen would also be used including in oil refineries, other like who need the gas to remove the sulfur from the fuels like diesel. So in refining process also green hydrogen would be helpful. So BRICS, it suggests using local currencies for the trade. So BRICS common currency, it is in news. It's a topic that is in debate right now regarding BRICS. So basically the recent summit, there's a suggestion like with all the countries with proper discussions, so they come out with the thing that they can use the local currencies for the trade thing. So BRICS nations, they have underlined the need for using local currencies in international trade and financial transactions. So basically they are trying to reduce their dependence upon US dollar, so that even the vulnerability that gets reduced. And apart from this, definitely there would be adhering to rules-based open and transparent global trade. So this term is like repeated very often. So it's very, very important. A key word we can say, key term, which is used in the context of international trade. And apart from this, they like also pressed for a robust global financial safety net with a quota-based and adequately resourced International Monetary Fund at its center. So that was another area. WTO reforms, they were also in part of the debate, and the countries, they condemned unilateral protectionist measures under the pretext of environmental concerns like unilateral and discriminatory carbon border adjustment taxes, which would be implemented by European Union taxes and other measures. So unilateral measures, they have been condemned, that under the garb of environmental concerns, the countries, they can't just unilaterally decide on imposing these protectionist measures in order to protect the domestic manufacturers and the domestic industry. And then there was, like yesterday, we took the topic, or one of the elements regarding BRICS was expansion of the BRICS in terms of which all countries can be made a part of BRICS in future. So that we took yesterday. So right now, BRICS, it brings together 5 of the largest developing countries of the world, which represents 41% of the global population, 24% of the global GDP, and 16% of the global trade. And then NDB is also associated with BRICS. So these are important details regarding it. So pet coke, it is used in the steel plants. You can just remember this thing. And it is extracted from crude oil during the refining process. And it has many industrial uses. So it can also be used as a fuel, and import of the pet coke for fuel purposes is prohibited in India. So you can't import pet coke for fuel purposes. All right, but it can be imported if you want to use it in steel plants. So that is permissible. Then regarding MSP, you need to know that like which all crops or for which the government does not provide MSP, instead of remembering key MSP is provided for which all things. Coming to Indian Express newspapers, again, here we'll just take up the things which we have not taken up till now. So here. So yesterday also we talked about the sedition law and the recommendations of the Law Commission. So law panel suggest hardening sedition law, raise the jail term to 7 years or life sentence. So this is a part of their recommendation that you need to strengthen the sedition law more. And in order to ensure that it is not misused, so you need to come up with certain regulations that we are able to ensure that it is not misused in future. So instead of completely scrapping it, saying that it comes from a colonial time period would not be justified as per the Law Commission. So they are saying that proper amendments, whichever amendment is required in order to ensure that it is not misused. So that would be something reasonable and rational thing to go ahead with. So in Supreme Court, government was for review. So in May 2022, the government, it informed Supreme Court via an affidavit that it had decided to re-examine and reconsider Section 124A. So Section 124A talks about sedition law. And after the court, it expressed a prima facie view that provision was unconstitutional. The government urged it to defer the hearing petitions challenging the constitutional validity of the law until such an exercise was carried out. So Commission in its 279th report recommended amending Section 124A to qualify that the law penalize only those with a tendency to incite violence or cause public disorder. So this law is used when you see, or when you, like, there's a situation where you are seeing that a person is trying to incite violence or cause public disorder. So in that case, that is one area, one reason where this law can be used. So we've already taken up this article, talked about the US debt ceiling deal, and apart from that, so UN agency, it issues a warning of flow of illegal drugs from Asia's Golden Triangle. So Golden Triangle, Golden Crescent, these are important terms related to the drug transport. So huge trade in the methamphetamine and other illegal drugs originating from a small corner of Southeast Asia shows no signs of slowing down, and this is as per United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So high volumes of methamphetamine continues to be produced, and it is trafficked in and from the region, while the production of ketamine and other synthetic drugs, it has expanded with time. So the lion's share of methamphetamine, it comes from area which is known as Golden Triangle, where the borders of Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand meets. So these three countries are part of the Golden Triangle, and production of opium and heroin used to flourish there, mainly because of lawlessness around Myanmar's remote eastern Shan state. So because of lawlessness, there is no proper law and order situation to deal with such a kind of a situation. So that's why we're seeing that most of the drugs, they are produced here and then they are trafficked. Oil reserves in salt caverns. So this is an important topic. Oil reserves in itself is a very important topic. So government-owned engineering firm is studying whether petroleum reserves, they can be developed in Rajasthan's salt caverns or not. So why do countries, they need these SPRs, and how is a salt cavern storage? It is different from the rock caverns. So even in the rock caverns, the oil reserves, they can be stored, but here we're talking about the potential of storing them in the salt caverns. So operating a salt cavern, how does it work? So that has been explained through this picture. Let's try to understand this in detail. So crude oil, it is a natural gas or other petroleum substances, these three things that might be stored in the reserve, they are extracted by pumping brine into the cavern. So petroleum substance has a lower density and it is pushed out of that cavern using this process. So here basically pumping of brine happens, which leads to the extraction of the natural gas or crude oil, whatever is stored in the cavern. So you can see that here it is brine, which is pushed into through this process, this pipe. and oil is on the top, so it gets extracted out from this pipe. So here it is, like you can see, it is completely a salt surface. Here you have the cap rock, then you have the upper surface. Here brine, water, and then oil is coming out from here. So to add more petroleum substance to the reserve, the requisite volume of brine, it is pumped out, creating the required space. So if you want to store more of crude oil, then you have, like, obviously the space is limited and it is fixed. So you would have to take out the brine out and then add the oil, whatever amount you want to add up. And in this operation of extraction and replenishment is done from the surface, usually through two pipeline systems. So you can see that there are two pipeline systems, one each to the residual brine at the bottom of the cavern and the stored hydrocarbon. So since their densities, they are different, so brine does not mix with the stored substance. So because जो crude oil है या natural gas है and brine जो है, unki density is different, so that's why they do not get mixed up. So that is the benefit, and that is why brine is used here. So a surface brine pond is usually maintained for use in operating the cavern, and the brine, it can be reused repeatedly also. So even that is one of the advantages, and that's how this entire process works when we talk about storing the oil reserves or natural gas reserves in the salt caverns. So if this idea it comes to fruition, so India, it could get its first salt cavern based oil storage facility. So right now we do not have any kind of such facility in India in operation right now. So the country's three existing strategic oil storage facilities, they exist at Mangaluru and Padur in Karnataka and Vishakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh. So they are made up of excavated rock caverns. Here we're talking about the salt caverns, all right? Then apart from this, India, which is the world's third largest consumer of crude, it depends upon the imports for more than 85% of its requirement, and the strategic petroleum reserves, they could help ensure that energy security that remains in place and availability during the global supply shocks and other emergencies. So that's why it is important to maintain these crude oil reserves. So right now, the total capacity is around 5.33 million tons or around 39 million barrels of crude. And that can meet around 9.5 days of the demand. So if there is any, globally there is supply shock or there is a shortage of supply. So even in that case, where these oil reserves, they come into the picture, and that's why they're so important. So right now the total capacity is that we'll be able to like easily meet the demand requirements for 9.5 days. And right now we are in the process of expanding our total storage capacity, reserve capacity, by a cumulative 6.5 million tons at two locations. So that is at Chandikol in Odisha and Padur in it is like total 2.5 million tons. So here, even in terms of capacity at these different locations, you need to know the proper chronological order, that where at which location we have the maximum storage capacity. So India's strategic oil reserves, they come under the Petroleum Ministry's special purpose vehicle, Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So here we are talking about salt cavern, like we already have the storage capacity in the rock cavern. Then why are we talking about salt cavern? So that is because it is cheaper to store the crude oil in the salt cavern and less labor and cost in these are less labor and cost intensive. So they're cheaper and less labor is required in order to carry out these operations in terms of salt cavern reserve storage. So here we have a detailed comparison between the salt cavern based reserves and the rock cavern based reserves. So this is an important area. So unlike the underground rock caverns, which are developed through excavation, obviously for rock caverns, you will need to go with the excavation exercise. So in terms of salt caverns, they are developed by the process of solution mining, which involves pumping water into the geological formations with large salt deposits to dissolve that salt. So after the brine is basically water with dissolved salt. So that is called brine in chemical terms. So after that brine, it is pumped out of the formation. The space it can be then used to store the crude oil. So in terms of salt caverns, you don't have to go for excavating the ground, all right, which has to be done in case of the rock caverns. So here the process is very simple, it is faster, and it is less cost intensive than the developing an excavated rock caverns. So that is one advantage. Then the salt cavern based oil storage facilities, they are naturally well sealed and they're engineered for rapid injection and extraction of oil. So it is easier to even use it, like for in terms of accessibility also, it is easier to use the salt caverns. So the salt that lines the inside of these caverns has extremely low oil absorbency. So even the surface would not be absorbing the oil that would be stored here. So which creates a natural impermeable barrier against the liquid and the gaseous hydrocarbons, making the caverns apt for storage. So these are some of the advantages, and salt caverns, they are also used to store liquid fuels and natural gas in various parts of the world as well. So that this is one of the practices which is followed globally. So they are also considered suitable for storing compressed air and hydrogen also. So talking about the potential in India for storing crude and petroleum reserves. So Rajasthan, which has the bulk of the requisite salt formations in India, it is seen as the most conducive for developing these salt cavern based strategic storage facilities. And a refinery is also coming up in Barmer, and Rajasthan has the crude pipelines as well. Such infrastructure that is conducive for building these strategic oil reserves as well. So we'll not have to, invest much upon even infrastructure also. So that is also one of the advantages. And however, it is still too early to identify a specific site or make an estimate of the project cost right now. So strategic petroleum reserves program, what has been the story so far? So India's strategic oil reserves, they are part of the effort to build sufficient emergency stock pipelines on the line of the reserves of on the line of the reserves that the US and its western allies they set up after the first oil crisis of 1970s. So after this oil crisis, the incidents of 1970s, then the countries they started thinking about that whether they should have the strategic oil reserves or not. So that's when this area comes into the picture, and 3 existing rock cavern based facilities they were built during first phase of this program. So International Energy Agency, which is a Paris-based autonomous international organization in which India is an association country, recommends that all countries they should hold an emergency oil stockpile, which is sufficient to provide 90 days of import protection. But right now we are just having the reserves that would be sufficient to meet our requirements for 9.5 days only. So that's why we need to, work upon increasing our capacity for these strategic oil reserves. And when we talk about the oil marketing companies in India, so they have the storage facilities for crude oil and petroleum products for 64.5 days. But these are not the part of the strategic petroleum reserves. So which means that there is sufficient storage to meet around 74 days of the country's petroleum demand if we combine both these things. So we have also decided to commercialize these strategic petroleum reserves, as part of which the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, it stored about 0.8 million tons of the crude oil in the Mangaluru strategic reserves. So you need to remember this thing also, that even private players, they are participating in this exercise in India, and it is not just, completely handled and controlled by the government. So things they have already gone commercial, private players, they are participating in this exercise of maintaining the strategic crude reserves in India. So we are thinking about going ahead more in terms of the public-private partnerships so that we're able to reduce the government spending and exploit commercial potential of the reserves also. So right now we have our reserves completely filled, and apart from that, in 2021, India released 5 million barrels of its strategic reserves as part of the coordinated US-led action by major oil-consuming countries against the joint decision of major oil-producing nations to curb the output. So whenever we, have this kind of challenge of the supply of crude oil, so that's when these reserves, they become important, and 5 million barrels of crude was released when we were facing, or the OPEC, it took the decision to curb the output of crude oil. So Kosovo, it's in news since a lot of days. So here we have the map. Here you have Serbia, and here this is Kosovo. We have Albania, and here we have Adriatic Sea. Here we have Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Djokovic's Heart of Serbia, story of contesting the national claims and a deep ethnic divide in Kosovo. So we're not going into much details, but we have seen that there were recent incidences of violence in Kosovo. So Djokovic belongs to Serbia, and Kosovo is a region in Serbia's southwest, which is sharing borders with North Macedonia, Albania, and Montenegro. So Kosovo declared independence from Serbia in 2008, but Serbia does not recognize Kosovo's statehood. So that is the issue where it all starts from. And then there was violence after the ethnic Serbs, who are a minority in Kosovo, but they are in a majority in the northern Kosovo. So they tried to prevent the Albanian mayors taking charge in the local council. So that's when the violence incidents, they were witnessed. So this is a picture of the mural, which was tweeted by the Union Minister Prahlad Joshi. So this is there in the new parliamentary building. So here you can see that there's a map of India, Akhand Bharat, that we talk about. And this is basically predating to the Ashokan era. So at that point of time, that's how India looked like. Obviously, we do not have Pakistan back then. And here you can see a stone inscription kind of thing, which is talking about Akhand Bharat. So we are not going into the political aspects of this debate in this issue. So important terms for different areas, like you can see different labels, like Afghanistan was known as the Afghantham, Kabul as Kubanagar, Peshawar as Purushpur, and then Multan as Mulstan, Tibet as Trivis Trivishta, Sri Lanka is Single Dweep, and Myanmar was known as Brahmadesh. So these are different names, the older names. And official description of the mural says that between 265 and 238 BC, Ashoka spread the message of Buddhism and got it inscribed at many places. So Ashoka's Dhamma, that is very important topic. And apart from that, we've already talked about this mural, what it talks about, talking about Akhand Bharat. So that is all about today. Thank you so much for joining us, and do like this video and subscribe to our channel.